Hi, I'm Chris, and this is the Run Your Mind podcast, where we focus on the mindset and mental well-being side of running and fitness. Each episode brings you insights to help you build a healthy mindset with honest conversations and practical tools that you can use in your own fitness journey, giving you what you need to work on your mind, not just your mileage.
And again, what I like about values is it ties you back into the present moment, right? So we can sometimes get so caught up in past or futures, but ultimately the only time you can impact it is here and now.
Today I'm joined by Antonio Capasso, and we'll be talking about the importance of understanding and being clear with your values. Tony will be sharing how they can serve you in your day-to-day performance and training, and how you show up, the value they have in avoiding unhealthy comparison with others, and how you can start to become clearer on defining your own values. So let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the Run Your Mind podcast. You might notice something's a bit different today. We are walking. We've had a conversation with the park ranger who shut us down for the day for running and filming, just in time, unfortunately, for this episode, but we move. So today I'm joined by Tony. Tony, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited. Bit gutted about the run part, but it's fine. To be honest, I could do with a rest, so it's all good.
Yeah, I think it feels weird, doesn't it, when you're like walking actually sometimes and not actually running when you're in a park now.
Keep expecting us to like get into stride.
We can test Ben when he's filming as well.
Yeah.
For people tuning in who maybe it's the first time they're seeing your face and hearing about you, do you mind giving them a bit of an overview in terms of your background and anything else you think would be valuable to share?
Yeah, 100%. So I know we've had quite a few conversations. Chris and I have crossed paths like accidentally almost at the start. Because we're in like a very similar realm. So I'm a sport and exercise psychologist. So what that means is you have the sports side where I try and help performers maximize their full potential through using psychological theory and my own knowledge. And then you have the exercise element, which is where I try and engage people in exercise and have that healthy behavior change, again, through using my knowledge of psychological theory and constructs.
Yeah, nice. And you mentioned that where we first met, it was obviously through running.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting, and I think, with social media, you can see people in the running space or fitness space and think, oh, they must have always been doing this.
Yeah.
But what got you, talk to me a bit more about your running journey. Like, how long has it been since you started, and what was the reason you started in the first place?
Yeah, so there's almost like two phases of my running. Before uni, I used to do athletics. I used to run 800 meters and then cross country. Yeah. And loved it, really enjoyed it. Went to university, realized that I couldn't live the student lifestyle that I wanted and still perform in running. Yeah. So it kind of ended up taking a bit of a back seat, and then I moved to London, and ironically enough, I almost had to use my own knowledge, and I was like, right, I want to make friends, I want to get back into my running again. So I just found like the run club community. Yeah. And it was generally one of the best things I did since moving to London.
What was talk to me a bit more about that then. What's one of the biggest things that's come from joining that run club community?
Yeah, so like, I always said to people, because I know there's connotations around run clubs and what they mean, etc. But for me, generally, like I moved to London. I had a few friends, but like not loads, and I didn't want to make all my friends at work. Yeah. Because you want to have that nice work-life balance. My housemates were amazing; they really welcomed me in. But I felt like I was relying on them a lot for my social life. Yeah. And I've always been into fitness and stuff, so I thought, well, why not go and meet people in a environment that's not the pub? Yeah. Why not go and meet them in like a run club where like we're already going to have something in common because we run, and then also I am non-competitive, so I'm going to get sucked up into the like wanting to get better and like wanting to improve my running, and yeah, it kind of like worked perfectly. Like I now run a track night on a Monday, which came about really randomly. Yeah. Try and run on a Wednesday and then run on a Saturday as well. Which helps me at the most of the weekend too. Like you get up on a Saturday morning, and the habit has become like a thing now. Like I think the thought of getting up at 8 a.m. used to terrify me. I'd be like, I deserve my lion. Now I'm up at 8 a.m. like no real questions asked. Like I'm ready to get out the door. So yeah, it's worked perfectly. And then we've gone on holidays together. Like done loads of. I think I see them 3 days a week now. Yeah. Plus do social stuff. So it's worked really perfectly.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I think, the community aspect is something that I didn't realise until I got involved in running, just how much I not just wanted it, but almost needed it. Yeah. I realised actually a reflection I had a few months ago, if I take myself back to a year or two, I was probably slightly lonely in my life without really realising it. And I think we can have this concept of loneliness being this complete isolation where you don't see anyone, you don't do anything, but we're still seeing family, we're still seeing certain pockets of friends, but particularly working for myself, and I don't know if you find this as well, you don't have that immediate office culture straight away sometimes, with those people around you. And even if you do, there's different levels to it. And having got into running, and particularly with the Run Your Mind space and being around people, meeting people like yourself that are very similar minded, it's been such a nice way to connect with people beyond just that surface level conversation you might have with people.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think it's that case of, especially in the run community, people often see you from like when you first started, and then they see you sign up to like a 10K and they see that you've done well in that and you've reached a goal. But what's nice is that everyone wants to build you up. So like everyone's so happy to celebrate your personal win, whether it's just finishing the race or whether it's getting a really good time. Everyone's just really excited to see you thriving and doing well. Yeah, especially like I'm very similar to yourself. Like I'm working for myself a lot. Like I work from home, and I'm such an extroverted person that like it absolutely, the day just drags and it kills me. So then I really look forward to going out in the evening and I'm doing something, but I'm not just going to the pub and drinking. As much as I do enjoy having a drink, like it's nice to go somewhere, interact with these people that are like lifting me up and being uplifting, and like doing a healthy like activity on top of that. So yeah, it's really good. Like generally, I think we're just the two biggest advocates for it. But yeah, it's been fantastic.
Good. Well, when we were talking about the podcast today, I obviously always want to find like a topic, an area that someone's passionate about, and we settled on the topic of values. And I suppose I'm asking this as a curious question. Maybe people might be also about this, but first of all, what was the reason behind wanting to pick this topic and how it relates to your own personal journey with running or life really?
Yeah, the reason I went for this topic is because, as I said, I do sport and exercise psychology, and they're very similar, but they can also be very different. But I found with every client, whether it's focusing on the sport performance side of things or just having that behavior and lifestyle change, it all comes down to values. So we can really often get caught up in like the societal norms or like social ideologies of like what you should be achieving and working towards in life. And like a lot of people, they think they must get this, like, especially through social media, think you must get this, you know, this high performance target, or like, exercise is all about reaching this goal. But actually like life's all about what it means for you. And the values act as a compass for that. So that's why I think for me it was something that I really want to discuss with you, especially because you see people who can get caught up in the run club community and almost forget why they joined in the first place, and almost forget that they've already reached their goal of having that healthy behavior change, running more often. They're now suddenly like, oh, I didn't get a sub 130, forgetting that that's not normal. Like the fact you're just running every day is incredible. And what values do is it act as like a base for us to come back to and to recognize, okay, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to represent to the world. And then running is just one way in which I can do that. And so it gives you that direction, as I say, it gives you that compass, so you can make sure you're sticking true to who you are and also what you want to get out of life.
What do you think is the reason in it? Because a lot of people might step in with that intention of thinking, I want to run my first marathon, or I want to get into running, but then they lose sight of it along the way. What do you think are some of the biggest reasons around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like multiple different reasons as to why it happens. Ultimately, it's down to like the individual. When you have that conversation with them, it's interesting what shows up, but sometimes you can get sucked up into the community, and because you're around such positive people that are aspiring to achieve goals, it's very easy to do that self-comparison piece, and then you think, oh, I've not done enough. And then you start chasing a goal that ultimately wasn't your goal in the first place, and then often you then find that people achieve it and they're like, oh, that didn't really do much for me. I now need to get faster because clearly that wasn't enough. Whereas actually it's not, you can keep changing that goal, but what they're not doing is sitting down and reflecting on, why did I get into this in the first place? And then what is it I'm looking to achieve from this? Like I always say, as much as I love running and I am competitive at it, there needs to be a point where I stop trying to achieve a time goal. Because I'm not going to be Mo Farah. And I'm not going to compete in this. Like this is a hobby and something that I enjoy doing, and it's a way that I express who I am as a person. So I think it's often getting caught up in the culture and who you surround yourself with. Often like you might find that you've achieved the goal really easily, so you think, oh, now I need to set something else. But it's that way of actually just spend some time reflecting on like what you've done,
Yeah.
rather than always thinking I need to go for more. And also if it hasn't fulfilled you, then again, it's sitting down, having that internal reflection, speaking to someone like you or me, and really analysing, okay, why didn't that give me that satisfaction that I was looking for?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, isn't it, when people have this shift. And as you say, it's a good thing to be surrounded by people who maybe change your aspirations or inspiration. But it is reminding yourself constantly and reminding yourself why you got into it, but also being okay with that changing as you evolve, but being more intentional with not doing it because someone else has said it, but going,
Yes.
okay, if it has changed, or I'm thinking this now, is this because it's being driven by me? Is it can be influenced by others, but is this something really what I want? Like,
Yeah.
you know, if I take myself back a year ago, I when I started running, I was like, I'm never going to do a marathon. I've got one booked later this year, but I was really conscious of going, am I just booking this? I asked myself, am I booking this because everyone else is booking a marathon? And the answer was no. And that's probably why it's taken me so long, over a year, to do it, because it actually came from a very nice kind of organic way of finishing my challenge and going, actually, I really enjoyed that challenge mentally. I'd like to see where my mind goes when I'm maybe up the distance.
Yeah.
And it's rather than going, I've just seen everyone else do it, so I want to do it. It has a deeper core, and to your point, like a value behind it.
Yeah.
That will then mean, and I think some people can struggle with this, you might see it as well, people will train for something that really wasn't their goal in the first place, and that's why you can have such a drop off
Yes.
afterwards, where all of a sudden they stop running completely, or they fall out of love with it, or they then like feel this sort of post-marathon blues.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I think it's that one of, I always say, start with understanding the why.
Yeah.
And then understand, so, okay, well, like, why do you want to do this? I know for yourself, the 30 halves and 30 days, a lot of that came down to, I know you had it written on the hand of, remember when I couldn't actually do this?
Yeah.
Now it's like that chance for you to celebrate how far you've come.
Yeah.
And really show, you know, how powerful just changing and focusing on your mindset and implementing things can have such a powerful impact on your life, where you're now in such a healthy physical state that you can achieve such a goal.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, so that was your clear why. And then from that, you then build the values. Okay, I want to do this, and who is the person I want to portray and get across while I'm working towards this.
Yeah.
I know we did the midnight marathon together, and a lot of people are like, why? What's the point? And it was just like, you know what? It was a really good way of me testing, you know, what are my values? So I always say I want to be a leader, I want to be driven, I want to be reliable, I want to be caring, kind. You know, I have sort of 7 values that I focus on. And for me, it was a chance to test that.
Yeah.
And to see, you know, can I actually put into practice what I preach to people?
Yeah.
And when it was 1:30 in the morning and I'd kicked on because I just wanted to get it finished with, I found myself, you know, really pulling on, well, I'm doing this because this is who I am as a person, and this is one way in which I can show that, and can again, like, just test myself to make sure that I am staying true to who I want to be and who I want to actually get across to the wider world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, one thing I always remind myself of is, with anything, is your brain doesn't care what you do until you remind it of why you're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, the thing itself, you will lose enjoyment, motivation, excitement for it very easily if you, first of all, haven't got a clear understanding of why you're doing it, or as you say, like that self-reflection throughout that period as well. So if someone's watching this and they're thinking, that makes sense, but I don't know what my values are, you know, you've shared a few there. What's a process or a way in which someone can maybe become more connected with it? Because I think sometimes people might pick out these words, but then it's like understanding the meaning behind it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a great question. It's, you know, one that I was looking to tackle today with a client, and we call it the Batman effect. So it's like, think about a role model, or someone that you aspire to be like. What is it? And it could be multiple people. It doesn't have to be one person. It could be a fictional character. It could be a real character. It could be a sportsman. It could be someone, you know, in the wider life. It could be a family member, a friend.
Yeah.
What are the traits and characteristics that they hold that makes them so inspiring, that makes you want to be like them, or makes you respect them? And just sit down and just spend, not even that long, just spend 15 minutes really thinking about it on an evening and noting it down. Okay, like, what is it about them? Okay, they are dependable. Like, they are always there when I need them or when someone else needs them. They are honest. They stay true to who they are, who they say they want to be, and the goals that they are setting themselves out to be. If they have a bad day, they're honest about it, they admit it. What is it about that person that you find so inspiring? And then why can't you encompass some of those?
Yeah.
So that's the Batman effect, is like, what would they do in that situation?
Yeah.
And why can't I then go out and do that?
Yeah. And I suppose also on there is also then adding the because as well, isn't it?
Exactly.
I want this because, like, what's the attachment? Like, I admire this person, I admire their curiosity, I admire their resilience or persistence because, and I think it's getting people to reflect a bit deeper all the time on, well, what's at the core of this?
Yeah.
What's the purpose? What's the reason you want to be curious? What's the reason you want to care about things in the right way? What's the reason you want to be intentional with whether you're training for a marathon is? And it's almost keep asking yourself why is that? Why is this? Like, when I work with people sometimes, they're like, I want to get a really quick time, or I want to work on this. Okay, what's the reason behind that?
Yeah.
Because, and it might come back to my one, is like, remember when you couldn't run because I had asthma when I was a kid and I couldn't run. So every time now I run, I'm grateful to remind myself of when I couldn't. And that for me is like a great level of perspective and a sort of level of gratitude of when I am doing this, no matter how hard it is, it's never going to be as hard as it was. And even us doing that midnight marathon, we spoke about this, of almost going, let's do it in one of the most toughest conditions. And, not trying to get any sympathy votes here for London marathoners who did it in 25 degree heat the next day, but almost like, darkness, your body's not really knowing what's going on. There's no crowds, there's nothing, but almost testing yourself, and kind of links to something I was talking about the other day with someone, is almost going and attacking your limiting beliefs in that sense. Like, put your values to the test in a controlled environment as well, so that when you need them, you've almost prepared yourself in that way.
Yeah, 100%. I think we can often get caught up in these, I call them like dysfunctional beliefs that we install into ourselves of like, I shouldn't have to do this, or I must feel this way in order to do this. By doing something like Midnight Marathon, I did zero preparation for it. Definitely don't recommend doing that. Could have made it way easier for myself, but the fact that I almost just threw myself into it with zero preparation meant that like I had to adapt.
Yeah.
So I had to develop the psychological flexibility to adapt with the scenario that I'd put myself in. But then I had a clear understanding of why I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And because I had that clear underlying narrative, the clear why, the clear, I'm doing this because, it then meant that I could think in a much more healthier frame of mind.
Yeah.
And then could then push my way and get to the end.
Yeah, and I think when you add that because as well, you just add more purpose, but it's more likely then to be able to develop habits easier, isn't it? And if you are coming back to your values and you're reminding yourself because of this, you avoid just feeling like certain tasks are monotonous or losing that meaning, and become less reliant on always feeling motivated to do something.
Yeah, I think that motivation piece is like, motivation comes and it goes.
Yeah. But
if you can create a really clear why, you can then really understand who it is you're trying to be, and the values represent that. So every day I wake up, okay, I'm going to be resilient, I'm going to be determined, I'm going to be driven, I'm going to be dependable, etc. Not saying these are all the best values to choose, but whatever relates to you, and you wake up and you say that, okay, this is who I'm going to be in the day, and no matter what life challenges me with, it's given the opportunity to then represent those values. Suddenly that shapes your whole motivation, right? Because it becomes something more than just some extrinsic, I want to get a medal, I want to get this time. There's more purpose behind it, and because it's purpose driven, it's easy to hold on to. So it's like, once you get the clear why, you create that really nice storyline, that arc that you're wanting to get and wanting to achieve. It then means that you can almost tap into that motivation a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And then when you lose sight of it, again, you have that bigger picture model of, I am doing this because of this, or I'm doing this because of the purpose of this. So, especially, you'll know the same when we're trying to build these like businesses and trying to help people, but ultimately that's our purpose, right? We have a very clear underlying motive of why we're doing something.
Yeah.
Which means that it's ultimately, those days where you're just sitting there thinking like, should I just go back to a 9 to 5 and something that's going to have structure?
Yeah.
Well, no, I have a clear why and I have a purpose. I want to be that person that I wanted to be there for me when I was younger. And suddenly that, straight away that motivation comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's so many knock-on effects of values here. It's the other thing as well of to your point, if you're reminding yourself of these things, it reminds you of the controllables.
Yeah.
It's making sure, is my value controllable? Like, is it something I can influence each day and show up regardless of what happens around me? And not only does it then make you more focused on the controllables, but also probably more present as well, because it's like, okay, for me, I heard this quote years ago, and it kind of ties into one of my values about being courageous.
Okay.
It was from a lyrics from a song, I can't remember. It was like, be brave, be different, just be you and be consistent. And I'm always like asking myself each day, like, how can I be courageous today?
Yeah.
Rather than being confident. I always think when we focus on confidence, we put an expectation of perfectionism around it, and you won't always feel confident, but you can always be courageous. And for me, going into situations where I think about courage, it makes me more curious around that, but it makes me more present in it and going, right, how can I be courageous today, rather than I want to be confident in this, which can make you almost like do a massive time lapse between now and where you want to be. Yeah,
100%. And it's almost funny because one of the posts that I put up on Instagram a month or so back now was, is it confidence or bravery?
Yeah.
So if you achieve confidence by doing a task over and over again successfully, but bravery means doing the task regardless of whether you know you're going to be good at it or not.
Yep.
Or is it actually the confidence you need, or is it the bravery you need just to do the task in the first place, knowing that the more you do it over time, you'll eventually build up a confidence?
Yeah.
So that's again where that thing of like, okay, I want to be a brave person.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm going to do this task. That's how you see how you've brought the value in there, and therefore, and then you've applied it by making sure you just do it regardless of what the result's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's like, whether it's a success or whether it's not even a failure, but whether you don't hit the goal that you were aiming for, or like actually it does not matter, because at the end of the day you stuck true to who you said you were going to be, and you were brave. So you can go to bed that night saying, you know what, didn't achieve what I wanted to, but I tell you what, I am a damn brave person.
Yeah. And do you know Will Tennyson? Have you heard of him?
I have, yeah.
He entered a bodybuilding competition for the first time. He's a YouTuber who will be very open and probably one of the most authentic, I think, in the space.
Okay.
But one of the quotes he said about it was like, you can't control the outcome, but you can control your effort. And it's kind of going, every single day you might do the same thing, but you'll get a different outcome.
Yeah.
But to your point, is going to bed at the end of the day going, I did everything I could. And it's not trying to create toxic positivity around it, going, everything is fine. It's going, you can still be disappointed, you could still be frustrated, but it's focusing on that controllable. And actually reminds me of a point you mentioned earlier on where, you'll say to people, you said, oh, I'm not Mo Farah, so I'm not going to train like that. I think another thing people should be wary of is that all or nothing thinking. It's not saying don't care at all, because some people, when you say that, are like, oh, shall I just not care about my training? Shall I just not bother train? No, but like lowering your standards doesn't mean having no standards. It's 100%. Finding that those standards that are meaningful to you. Yes, take the aspirations, and the beauty of running, I think, is that, like a lot of people have said, and there's a little Pete Cooper doing the rounds at the moment actually on TikTok of this, he said you can't play at Lord's, you can't play at Wembley, but you can run on the same racetrack as like all these professional athletes. So there is a certain level of sort of equality in running.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it can blur the line sometimes, where people then think, oh, I need to be doing this, without actually going, well, okay, is that aligned with your values, or is that completely you losing the joy of running and that feeling of complete disappointment regardless of what you achieve?
Yeah, and again, with the Mo thing, like, if you're doing it because you want to get back into running, you want to be healthy, you want to be fit, you want to be able to be mobile when you get older, and running is a great way of doing that within reason. If you start doing ultras, then good luck to your knees. But you can turn around and say, okay, I don't want to be Mo Farah in terms of what he achieved, but I really admire some of the characteristics that he stands for. How can I then implement that into my training program? So there you've had that slight shift from, oh, the only way I can be like Mo is to win an Olympic medal. So actually, no, I can be like Mo every day in the way that I represent myself and the way that I attack a situation or I attack a training block. What would he do? Would he end up skipping the session because he doesn't feel 100%, or would he say, you know what, I'm going to go at this irregardless and just see what comes of it? Because then you've stayed true to yourself. You stayed honest to who you want to be. You have that accountability element.
And you've stayed true to the controllable, the effort there, haven't you? You haven't gone, this is the time I need to get to the end. You're like, no, let's focus on, everyone sees the finish line, the PBs and all that, but that's not the thing you that you can control.
Yeah.
You control that training session, you control that. So
Exactly.
to that point is going, what would they do in this situation is a controllable thing, and that's where you can use it effectively, where it doesn't become an unhealthy form of comparison, because I think our brains are always thinking like friend or foe, and if you're constantly looking at afar going, God, that person's so good at this, or so good at that, that's where that resentment or jealousy can sometimes creep up, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, what I like about values is it ties you back into the present moment, right? So we can sometimes get so caught up in past or futures, but ultimately the only time you can impact it is here and now.
Yeah.
And the values help you do that with that controllable element of, okay, I might not get the PB I want because I'm tired today, but what can I implement here and now that will maybe help me towards maybe achieving that PB, but also just help me still get something out of the day. It's still going to be a win for me.
Yeah.
And that's what's so like crucial about those values, is that no matter what happens, here and now in the present moment, you can decide how you want to react to a situation.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about a few times self-reflection.
Yes.
And it's not just important to identify your values, but to go through what are some useful self-reflection questions that people could ask themselves on a daily, weekly or monthly, yearly basis, do you think, that can help check in with their values and acknowledge maybe the things that they might miss in terms of progress and the smaller wins?
Yeah, so I think, again, it comes back to that big picture element, right? So it's okay, like, why did I set these in the first place?
Yeah.
What was I hoping to achieve from this? And it's that way of, outside of the external idea of I've hit this PB target or I've done this, how true to yourself were you being? So each day, and I sometimes get people to almost map their values out on like a circle.
Yep.
And then you sort of rate each one out of 10. It's like being honest and truthful to yourself. Over the week, how often did you make moves towards that value?
Yeah.
Or how often did you make moves away from it?
Yep.
And also getting, when I set values with any client, we write down a definition of the value for themselves.
Yep.
So they have a clear understanding of what that value means to them and then why it's important to them. So it's then they have a very clear understanding of, when I go away from this is what this value stands for. This is why I want to be like that. And then you can understand, okay, on the day-to-day, what does that look like? And then it helps you just have that more honest reflection.
Yeah. Yeah, I think self-reflection for me has been one of the biggest and simplest game changers, I think, in terms of, again, going back to whether it's working for yourself or your own fitness journey and running, you are almost a one-man band in that sense. You have that community, but your progress is, if you're not giving it to yourself, you'll become overly reliant on external validation, on maybe your Strava times, on the shout outs, on the mentions, on other people saying stuff to you, which even when they do, ironically, you don't believe it because you're not telling yourself. And that's why people struggle so much with compliments. It's because they're not actually giving it to themselves. And one question that's really helped me, and I ask this in a different way sometimes, is how am I better off compared to this time last week, month or year? And it's, again, not trying to create toxic positivity or ignore the things that aren't going to plan, but 80% of our daily thoughts are negative. Like, I don't need reminding of the things I know to work on, but I probably do need to remind myself, or want to, of how am I better off? What have I progressed with? It's not saying it's perfect, but it's kind of reminding yourself you might not be where you want to be yet, but on reflection, you're probably further along than where you were. 100%.
And something I like to do with a client, because it can be, as I said, if you're mapping out these values and rating yourself out of 10 every week, it can be really easy to fixate on the weaknesses, but also look at your super strengths. So I'm trying to do it to myself. If I was to turn around and be like, okay, actually, I was really kind and caring this week, and that's one of my values that I'm actually really strong in. So how can I use that to help me in other situations? So, okay, like, I want to be viewed as a leader. That's one of the traits that I would like to be. Okay, well, you're not going to be a good leader if you're not kind and caring. So how can I start implementing that into interactions I have with others, into trying to inspiring others and lifting them up? So you can see how not only, it's not toxic positivity, because I'm not saying I'm a great leader or everything's perfect. What I'm saying is actually, well, I'm really good in this area. So how can I pull on that to bring up other areas of myself as well? Yeah, and I think there's a big clue in this as well, and people might have been picking this up already, but it's asking yourself questions. Where it often will be, if we're just saying, I'm not good enough for this, I'm not great at that, I'll never be able to do this, they're very static, finite statements.
where you're stuck in, where as soon as you ask questions, your brain can go and do what it's designed to do, which is to, right, how do we solve this?
Yeah.
And like the how questions get you to think more tangible, don't they, on that controllable, on that area, versus just sort of seeing it as this limiting belief of, well, if I tell myself something, I'm just always going to believe it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like going, if someone said you can't go down that road, you can't drive down there, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because your brain's like, well, what's the point of wasting brain power?
Yeah. And again, what's so interesting is that like we get so caught up and fixated on the uncontrollable elements.
Yeah.
And we waste so much energy on those that we don't realize that we're then forgetting to fixate our attentions on what we can do and what we can control. So again, what really helps you with the values, I feel like if you were to do a game of every take a shot every time we say values, you'd be well on the way to a good night out. But if you look at the values and go, right, this happened, I couldn't control it, it was really frustrating, but how can I then react to it? What's the solution I can look for, pulling on my own natural strengths and that own understanding of who I want to be? And then you start looking at the solutions rather than looking at that more rigid, less adaptive model of a situation or who you are or what's happened to you.
Yeah.
Because what we're looking to do is create adaptability. Unfortunately, the world isn't perfect, stuff happens, but it's that way of, okay, this has happened now, what can I do to make the situation more manageable or to turn it into my favor a bit more?
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like we can, very few things in our day we can always control, but we can always control how we respond to them. There's this analogy I often use, like I think I'll get the numbers the right way around, hopefully, but if you had £86,400 in your bank account and someone stole £15 of it, would you spend the rest of that money trying to get it back? Probably not. Well, there's 86,400 seconds in a day and people will steal 15, 30, 60 seconds of it, and too often do we let one moment then sap all of that other controllable time away from us. And it's not saying you shouldn't be bothered by certain things or frustrated, but it's dealing with it and processing it in the right way, but then bringing it back to what can I do now? And it comes back to those values, doesn't it? Of if you don't have those things, that's where you are sort of living day to day, and almost you are more at the mercy of how you're feeling in a certain way. And when you do have those things, that can trigger a stress response or frustration or anger. But then if you don't have that value, that baseline to maybe bring yourself back, you're almost then thinking, oh, well, today's a write-off, or this week's a write-off, or I'll just start again next week or next month.
Yeah. I love that analogy of using the money, because I think it makes it something that's a bit more like tangible. You can like hold on to it a bit better. It is that way of, like, this didn't happen. Well, then why have you got to let it ruin the whole evening? You can still, or like, this has happened in my race. Well, or in this competition, I'm so sorry that has happened to you, and that is really rubbish. And like, I can understand why you're frustrated, but you've still got a whole, if you think about tennis, you've got 2 sets ahead of you, or you've got, another 20k left of this race, or you've got, I'm trying to think of different sports now off the top of my head. You've got so much time. You've still got 70 minutes on the clock.
Or another 10 weeks of training.
Exactly.
Like just because it's 1 week.
Exactly. What can you do to still make sure there's a personal win that comes out of it?
Yeah.
And that's again where it comes back to just understanding, well, who you are, who do you want to stand for, and who do I want to represent off the back of this?
Yeah.
Stuff happens, whether it's within your control or not. Like, that's unfortunately just the way of the world. And again, I think it's really important to get across, and what I always say to my clients is that we're not saying we're perfect, we do this every time. We're just saying that we have read around it, and we can sort of see perhaps some of the areas that and some of the traditional classic mistakes that people make.
Yep.
I always like to view it as like I'm on one side of a cliff and you're on the other, and I can see what handhold you need to get onto next to make that step in the right direction.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that I think that I know it all, or that I am perfect in life, because we all make mistakes. But I think it's just we have a little bit of that understanding around what you can start implementing to make it a bit more manageable and to make your life a bit easier and to achieve those goals that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's a good clue there, whether if you don't work with someone like yourself or me, or is even just sharing, once you have got an idea of maybe your values, of sharing them with people and going
100%.
to your friends. And I'd say another way of looking at it sometimes is to go like, maybe how do my friends see me, but it's also, you still want to start with you at the forefront, but maybe even sharing it with others and going, this is something I'm working on, or this, it's that accountability as well, and sort of vocalizing that.
Yeah.
And it's also looking for clues. The self-reflection is important, but maybe even what other people are saying. Are other people noticing that you're doing that, not for their validation, but almost that confirmation as well externally that this is something that I am showing up in this way, because we can be blindsided and think, oh, I'm showing up how I think it, but maybe we're not. Maybe we're just sort of, we've created this sort of linear view of it. But if you're hearing it from other people, it's like, do you know what, actually, like I'm conscious of when people will say things, for example, coming to like Run Your Mind or how it feels, and I'm like, or a conversation, I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's how I want someone to feel. That's how I want someone to think of when they think about this situation. Or interpret, like when I was doing my challenge of, this is what I want someone to understand, my purpose behind it and what I stand for.
Yeah, again, it comes down to that idea of like, we all perceive the world in different ways. And even the interactions we have, we perceive differently. So it's then like having that check-in of, okay, like, you know, I'm looking to represent these values more. Can you please let me know if in this situation I came off in that way? And then just being open. You don't have to take on board the feedback if you don't agree with it, but it's also just having that ability to, and having the ability to actually take on board someone else's feedback and not having such a big ego that you don't want to listen to anyone else, because ultimately, yes, we have an understanding of who you want to be and how you want to portray it, but if you're doing it in the wrong way, then perhaps you just need to have a little reset and a rethink about what you're doing in that scenario, in that situation. Which, it's just so key.
And I think, you know, this is a whole, I mean, we could probably come back for 4 or 5 parts of this, and I know we're going to do some more stuff in the future, but I think feedback, people often struggle with it because it's so reactive. So often what you'll find is if you're proactively asking for it, you're less likely for the ego to jump in because you feel more in control. But secondly, people struggle with it so much because you don't seek it. And it's like anything, the more you can go looking for something, the smaller the kind of tweaks are going to be, rather than waiting every 6-12 months, is actually going and asking for it. And like anything, if you struggle with something, is thinking proactively, again, limiting belief. How do I attack it? How do I go and do this? If I struggle with feedback, maybe I'm going to make a promise that I'm going to ask my friend or my partner or someone I run with for some feedback. Like on a run, like, do you mind running behind me for a couple of minutes and just give me some feedback on my, you know, on my stride or my cadence or whatever it might be, and just doing it in a small way, and then just almost going to yourself like value of going, right, I'm going to listen here. And it's telling yourself like, this is how I want to show up. Almost that identity behind it of, I'm someone who listens to feedback. Versus if you keep telling yourself, I struggle with feedback, then again, those limiting beliefs are going to come in and go, well, okay, we're going to show you why.
100%, and that's when you start implementing. You're right, we could go on about this for hours, but you start implementing things like growth mindset, right? So actually understanding that you want to improve, and you're someone that's consistently improving throughout life. So if you do something wrong, it's not an attack on you. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It means, okay, there's an opportunity for me now to learn and to grow and to become a better person and more the person that I want to be and how I want to represent myself. Gosh, I've lost my train of thought now. But yeah, I think that's why it's so important to actually be able to just spend time listening and doing active listening. So often we listen, I mean, we have a response ready and we want to get our response across. And I'm sure we can think of people that when you talk to them, you can almost tell they're not listening to you because they've already decided how they want to respond. Actually, just get better at just taking on board the information, do things like, you know, paraphrase what the person has said to you, ask some questions back to really make sure you've understood it. Because as I said, we all perceive the world in different ways and we can perceive a situation very differently. So make sure you are registering what they're saying in the correct way. So ask questions back, paraphrase with them, you know, make sure you're really doing that listening element before then providing your own feedback. And as you say, just leave the ego at the door. If you're wanting to improve, then you've got to accept that you're not perfect. No one is perfect, unfortunately.
No, definitely. Well, you know, normally with these episodes, I get the questions out, but I feel like we've just flown through them indirectly. I haven't even needed them. But before we wrap things up, I'm going to go through a few quick fire questions with you. Okay, so you can keep these short and punchy. You haven't seen these either, have you? So you don't know what's coming up?
I am
okay.
excited.
What's one non-negotiable in your life at the moment?
One non-negotiable in my life at the moment.
Something you do on a daily or a weekly basis that isn't running, actually.
Yeah, it's what I'm, you know, one non-negotiable in my life at the moment is to make sure that I get down to the gym with someone.
Okay.
I've spent so long in the run community that I've like almost felt like I've lost that identity around the fact that I love gym and I've always been into gymming. So yeah, my non-negotiable is every week I pester one of my friends to keep me accountable and get to the gym with them. And I always feel so much better afterwards.
Yep, great. Favorite running mantra or phrase?
If you want to get good at running, get a group.
Okay. A person whose values I admire in my life is X because...
Going to go with the, I think, more sort of traditional answer of my dad, 100%. I think if I was to, you know, we always look up to people and have role models in our life, but I was to look at, you know, what he's managed to achieve and how he's been there for me throughout my time, I think that's something that I would like to try and replicate. Maybe not all of the things that he does, but definitely a lot of them. You know, his ability to be so kind and caring and empathetic to others, his drive and hard work and commitment that he's shown time and time again. You know, these are really, you know, strong values that I hopefully see in myself and would like to portray to the world as well.
Yeah, great. Well, Tony, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, we could do a feature-length episode here and probably still only touch the surface of it.
No, 100%.
For people joining, if it's the first time you're hearing about Tony and want to learn more about him, you'll find all the tags and website and other bits below. Let us know in the comments as well any questions, any takeaways from the episode or other topics you want us to cover. But Tony, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
And looking forward to working with you more on some future content and some other ideas.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share, you know, what we always discuss basically whenever we catch up with each other. So yeah, it's been an amazing opportunity. If anyone does have questions, you know, I think you can tell I love talking about it. So do just drop me a line. I'd be more than happy to chat through some things. But yeah, thanks so much.
Great. Well, we'll see you on the next episode. Stay mindful.